For words from a man I'd never met. A man sleeping behind a dumpster in a worn army jacket. To save my life. Don't take that car. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I crouched down, looked under my front axle, and watched brake fluid spread across the asphalt like a dark, chemical confession. Someone had crawled under my car in the middle of the night and cut the brake line clean through. Pause for effect. But here's what keeps me up at night. Not the cut line, not the smell of brake fluid still on my fingers. It's what happened 2 days later. When I walked into that while reading Alive, and my own mother dropped to her knees. Not in relief. In fear. Because she was the one who ordered it. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where ordinary people face extraordinary betrayals, and the ones who get underestimated, they fight back with nothing but the truth. If you're new here, drop a comment right now and hit subscribe, because this story is going to need your full attention from start to finish. I'm talking attempted murder, $247,000 in stolen money, forged signatures, a shell company under a dead name, and a family so sure they'd gotten away with it that they never once called the hospital to check if I was breathing. Stay with me. Every detail matters. My name is Grace Reed. I'm 32 years old. And if you want to understand what happened on that October morning in Knoxville, Tennessee, you have to understand where I started. I wasn't born into the Calloway family. I was placed there. My biological parents died in a house fire when I was 6 years old. I don't remember the flames. I remember the smell. Smoke in my hair for 3 days afterward, soaked into the only clothes I owned. And I remember a woman from the state handing me a black trash bag for my things. That trash bag detail. I've never been able to shake it. A year later, Victor and Brenda Calloway took me in. Their son Derek was 4. They signed the papers, gave me a room in the back of their ranch house, and told their church congregation they'd saved a child. That was about as warm as it got. Victor Calloway, 58, ran a used car dealership called Calloway Motors on Kingston Pike. He wore pressed shirts and talked about turnaround quarters that never turned around. The dealership had been bleeding money since before I could drive. Brenda Calloway, 56, was the woman who volunteered at church bake sales and kept a spotless kitchen and organized the family Christmas card every single year. I was never in it. Not once. Not 1 year. 25 years of Christmas cards, and Grace Reed was never in the photo. Then there was Derek. 29 years old, still living at home, cycling through failed business ideas like a man trying on coats he'll never buy. A sports bar that lasted 4 months. A used car flipping hustle that lost money on every deal. A dropshipping store that never shipped a single thing. Derek wasn't cruel, not the way Brenda was. He was just empty. He did whatever Brenda told him to do. He always had. I kept my distance. My own apartment, my own career, my own groceries. The Calloways and I existed in the same city like parallel streets that never crossed, until someone died. But Walter was different. Slight softening in narrator tone. Walter Calloway. Victor's father. 84 years old when he died. The only person in that family who ever looked at me like I belonged. He ran an auto repair shop on the east side of Knoxville for 40 years. Built it from a single lift and a rented bay. 40 years of honest work, grease on his hands, coffee going cold on the workbench. He taught me how to change oil before I could ride a bike. And when I got older, he taught me something more important. People show you who they are, Gracie. Believe them. I believed him. I took that lesson and I built something with it. I became a cybersecurity analyst, self-taught, through scholarships and online certifications, late nights and early mornings. I moved into my own apartment at 22. I built a career from nothing, with no help from the Calloways. Not a single phone call, not a co-signed loan, not a word of encouragement. When Walter's health started failing 3 years ago, I was the one who set up his laptop, organized his online banking, drove him to medical appointments. He signed a power of attorney naming me as his financial representative. Pause. Not Victor. Not Brenda. Me. The week before he died, he called me into the living room. He was sitting in his wheelchair by the window. The one where he used to watch cardinals in the yard every morning. He held out a silver pocket watch. Wind-up mechanism. Older than me by decades. He pressed it into my palm without ceremony. Keep it wound, Gracie. It stops when you forget. He died 17 days before the will reading. I wound that watch every single morning since. At Walter's funeral, I stood by the casket alone. Brenda, Victor, and Derek sat in the front pew together. The pastor spoke about Walter's generosity, his work ethic, his love for family. I stood 6 feet away and listened and felt the pocket watch ticking against my sternum through my blouse. After the service, the mourners trickled out. I was making my way toward the side exit when I felt a hand close on my elbow. Brenda. She'd waited. Timed it perfectly. Not a single witness left in the hallway. She leaned close enough that I could smell her perfume. Floral. Expensive. Completely out of place in a church hallway. Her voice came out in a low, controlled hiss. You're not family. You never were. Don't expect to be in that will. I said nothing. I walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, and felt Walter's pocket watch ticking against my chest. His heartbeat still keeping time inside a silver case long after his own heart had stopped. I drove home. I didn't cry. Crying would have meant she'd landed. She hadn't. But I remember thinking, as I pulled into my parking lot that night, that Brenda Calloway had never once worried about being overheard when she said cruel things to me. She'd gotten comfortable. Comfortable people make mistakes. The night before the will reading, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, and a cup of coffee going cold beside me. I wasn't reviewing the will documents. I was doing what I'd promised Walter. Closing out his financial affairs, reconciling accounts, tying up loose ends before the estate process began. The work of someone who takes their responsibilities seriously. That's when I saw it again. Narrator tone shifts. Quiet, clinical, dangerous. The pattern I'd first noticed 6 weeks earlier, while Walter was still alive. Every 2 weeks. On a Tuesday, money leaving Walter's primary checking account. Sometimes a few $1,000s. Sometimes closer to 5. Same branch, same routing number, same destination. An account registered to the name B. Prescott. I flagged it the first time I found it. Ran a preliminary trace. The account was opened at a different bank. First Tennessee Credit Union. 18 months after Walter gave Brenda access to help manage his bills. B. Prescott. Brenda Prescott. Brenda Calloway née Prescott. I counted the transactions. 78 of them. Over 36 months. I opened my spreadsheet. Ran the total. $247,000. Pause. $247,000. Siphoned from a dying man's checking account through a shell entity built on his daughter-in-law's maiden name. I had known about this for weeks. I could have called the police while Walter was alive. I could have confronted Brenda. But Walter was in hospice, fading by the day. The idea of spending his last weeks watching the family implode over money he was losing anyway, made me sick. So I told myself, handle it after. I screenshotted every transaction. Built a timeline spreadsheet. Saved everything to an encrypted drive. Professional habit. In cybersecurity, you document before you act. I closed the laptop at midnight. The will reading was at 10. I set my alarm for 7. I didn't know yet that $247,000 in stolen money was the least of what the Calloways had done. 7:30 in the morning. October air. Clear sky. The kind of morning that doesn't warn you. I walked across my apartment complex parking lot with my keys in one hand and coffee in the other. A man stepped out from behind the dumpster near the back fence. Worn army jacket. Gray stubble. Thin frame. But his eyes were steady. Not the eyes of someone asking for change. The eyes of someone delivering a message. Misread. He knew my name. Don't take that car. I stopped. I didn't flinch. I looked at him and waited. He introduced himself as Frank Dolan. 67 years old. He'd worked at Walter's garage for 22 years. Head mechanic, then shop manager, until Walter retired and closed the business. After that, Frank's wife got cancer. Medical bills took everything. When Brenda took over Walter's finances, the monthly checks Walter had been quietly sending Frank stopped. Frank had been sleeping in his car, parked behind my apartment building, for the past 4 months. Walter had told him to watch out for me. Last night, Frank said. Around 2 in the morning. A truck pulled in. Black pickup. A man got under your car with a flashlight and a tool. Stayed about 30 minutes. I know that truck. Belongs to Victor's son. I crouched down. Looked under the front axle. The brake fluid was already pooling. A dark, sharp-smelling stain spreading across the asphalt. Slow and deliberate. The way a secret spreads once the container cracks. The line was cut clean. Not frayed. Not cracked from age. Sliced. I touched the pavement next to the puddle. My fingers came back wet with that chemical smell. The smell of something mechanical broken on purpose. I stood up. Steady hands. Thank you, Frank. He nodded. Walter asked me to. That was enough for him. Most people would have called 911. I called Nolan Webb. Nolan was a licensed private investigator out of Knoxville. I'd worked with him 2 years earlier on a corporate fraud case, a client's CFO embezzling through ghost vendors. Nolan was methodical, discreet, and he understood evidence chains the way a good mechanic understands engines. Not just what broke, but why and what to do next. I told him everything. Cut brake lines. Derek Calloway identified by a witness. We'll reading at 10. Nolan listened without interrupting. Then what do you want to do? Here's what I knew. If I called the police, they'd investigate the brake sabotage. Maybe charge Derek. But Brenda would play the shocked mother. Victor would play ignorant. And the $247,000 in stolen money would stay buried. Because brake sabotage and financial fraud are different investigations. Different divisions. Different timelines. I needed both exposed at once. In the same room. Where no one could run. To do that, I needed the Calloways to believe I was already gone. I need 48 hours, I told Nolan. Can you document the brake damage and stage an accident? He could. The plan took 20 minutes to build. Nolan drove to my apartment, photographed the cut brake lines from every angle, close-ups, wide shots, fluid samples. Then he arranged for a trusted mechanic to submit a sworn inspection report. Meanwhile, he pushed my car, engine off, steering locked, down Route 12, the road I'd normally take to the lawyer's office, and rolled it into a drainage ditch. Hood crumpled against a culvert. Driver door open. Nobody inside. By 9 a.m. local radio had it. Single vehicle accident on Route 12. Driver unaccounted for. I listened to the report from the back of a rideshare, heading to a motel 6 miles from Margaret Holt's office. Phase 1 was done. Nolan parked on the public road across from the Calloway house and waited. Telephoto lens. Legal. No trespassing. Just a man in a sedan with a camera and a clear line of sight through the living room window. The news hit the family around 11. Narrator voice goes very quiet here. Let the details breathe. Nobody in that house called 911. Nobody drove to Route 12. Nobody called Knoxville General or any hospital within 50 miles. Brenda stood in the kitchen, visible through the window above the sink. She made one phone call. Paced for a minute. Then she sat down at the table, folded her hands and went still. Come. Victor sat at the dining room table with his head in his palms. Didn't move for 20 minutes. Nolan counted. Derek went to the garage, came back carrying a black trash bag, walked it to his pickup, tossed it in the bed, and drove off. He was back in 40 minutes. Without the bag. From my motel room. I accessed the family phone plan's online portal. The account was still in Walter's name. He'd set it up years ago and never transferred it. I still had the login credentials from when I managed his affairs. I wasn't intercepting calls. I was reading message timestamps and contact logs on an account I had authorized access to. At 11:47 a.m., Derek sent a text to Brenda. 2 words. It's handled. At 11:48 a.m., Brenda replied. Thank God. Now get to the lawyers. Pause long deliberate. My brother texted my mother about my death. The way you'd text about picking up dry cleaning. It's handled. Those 2 words would come back around. I made sure of it that I sat in that motel room with 2 screens open and brake fluid still in the creases of my fingers. On the left screen, Walter's financial records. On the right, Nolan's surveillance photos loading one by one. Brenda on the phone, face blank. Derek carrying a trash bag. Victor frozen at a table like a man waiting for a verdict he already knew. 25 years. That's how long I'd lived in the orbit of these people. 25 years of being the girl in the back bedroom. The one not in the Christmas card. The one Brenda cornered at funerals to remind she didn't belong. And the one time they proved it beyond all doubt, by cutting my break lines on the morning of a will reading. They didn't even bother to check if I was breathing. No hospital call. No search party. No pretending. I opened a new folder on my encrypted drive. Named it Callaway. Inside, I built 6 sections, formatted exactly the way I'd format a cybersecurity incident report, because structure is how you make chaos legible. Section 1. Executive Summary. 1 page. Who did what, when, and to whom. Section 2. Financial Forensic Timeline. 78 transactions over 36 months. $247,000. Source accounts, destination accounts, dates, routing numbers. Every withdrawal mapped to its endpoint. The money branched into 3 channels from the B. Prescott Shell account. $140,000. Paid directly to Callaway Motors to cover the dealership's debt. $47,000. To credit cards belonging to Derek Callaway. Consumer debt. Electronics. Restaurant tabs. A failed bar lease deposit never refunded. $60,000. As a down payment on a vacation property in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Titled solely in the name of Brenda Callaway. Not Victor. Not jointly. Just Brenda. She bought herself a mountain getaway with a dying man's money. Section 3. Forgery evidence. Nolan called in the afternoon. He'd pulled the apartment security camera footage through a records request. At 1:47 a.m. the night before the will reading, Derek's black pickup entered the lot. At 2:23 a.m. it left. 36 minutes. Enough time to slide under a car and cut 2 brake lines. He'd also visited the AutoZone on Magnolia Avenue. Derek had been in 2 days before the sabotage. Bought a brake line cutting tool. Paid with his own credit card. The kid used his credit card at a store 2 miles from his house, Nolan said. Derek doesn't think ahead, I said. He does what he's told. The mechanic's sworn statement confirmed it. Both front brake lines deliberately severed with a sharp cutting tool. Perpendicular cuts. Clean. No vea. No corrupción. No accident. Deliberate. Then that evening the letter arrived. Nolan had picked it up from my P.O. box. Standard envelope. Walter's handwriting on the front. Postmarked 3 days before his death. Inside. A single sheet of cream-colored stationery. A sticky note attached to a bank withdrawal slip. Walter's shaky handwriting on the note. February 14th. $47,000. Ask Brenda who authorized it. I looked at the withdrawal slip. Walter's signature at the bottom. But it wasn't Walter's hand. I had seen Walter's signature thousands of times. On checks, on power of attorney forms, on birthday cards. His W had a distinct loop at the top. His C dropped low and wide. This signature was close. Good enough to fool a teller. But the W was too narrow. The C was cramped. Someone had practiced and gotten 80% of it right. 80% isn't Walter. Below the sticky note in smaller, shakier writing. I didn't sign this. Check the others. Walter couldn't fight from a wheelchair. But he could document. He could leave breadcrumbs for the one person he trusted to follow them. I scanned the document. Sent it to Clara Sims at Knoxville PD. Sent a copy to Margaret. Then I cross-referenced the February 14th withdrawal with the Shell account records. The $47,000 went straight to real estate escrow. The down payment on Brenda's Gatlinburg property. And it went deeper. In Walter's digital files, the cloud drive I'd helped him set up. I found a loan agreement dated 14 months before his death. $340,000. Lender, a regional bank. Borrower, Victor Callaway, doing business as Callaway Motors. Collateral, Walter's house. The 4-bedroom ranch in West Knoxville where Walter had lived for 41 years. At the bottom, a consent form. Required because the property was in Walter's name, not Victor's. Walter's signature on the consent form. Same forged handwriting. Same narrow W, same cramped C. Victor hadn't just known about Brenda's theft. He had committed his own. He pledged his father's home, the house where Walter built his life, raised his son, sat in a wheelchair watching cardinals through the kitchen window, to cover his dealership's debt. And he forged the consent to do it. I called Detective Clara Sims at Knoxville PD from the motel's burner phone. Clara and I had worked together 2 years earlier on a corporate embezzlement case. She'd handled the criminal referral after my firm delivered the forensic report. Professional relationship. She knew my work was thorough and she knew I didn't waste people's time. I laid it all out. Every section of the report. Every file, every photo, every receipt. Clara was quiet for a long time. Then, "This is enough for warrants. The financial trail alone qualifies as elder financial exploitation under Tennessee statute. Class B felony. And the break evidence supports attempted first-degree murder." She paused. "But Grace, if you want all 3 of them in one room when the warrants are served, the timing has to be precise." "I know. The will reading is in 2 days. All 3 will be at Margaret Holt's office. Your officers can wait outside. I'll present the evidence inside. When it's done, you come in. And if one of them runs, they won't run. They'll be too shocked that I'm alive." Clara filed the warrants that afternoon. Sealed by a judge until I gave the signal. Attempted murder. Elder financial exploitation. Conspiracy. 3 names. 3 charges. 1 room. 2 days away. I hung up and realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the weight of what was about to happen to the only family I'd ever known. The night before the rescheduled reading, I sat on the edge of the motel bed with the lights off. Thin carpet. Curtains that didn't quite close. A parking lot buzzing with a broken sodium lamp outside the window. My laptop was closed for the first time in 48 hours. I held Walter's pocket watch in both hands. Silver case, warm from my body heat. The ticking filled the quiet like a second heartbeat. I thought about the last time he'd shown me the mechanism. 2 months before he died. He was in his wheelchair at the kitchen table, the watch open on the counter. 40 turns. No more. "You overwind it, the spring breaks." He'd looked at me over his reading glasses. "Machines are honest, Gracie. They either work or they don't. People hide the broken parts." I hadn't understood what he meant. Not then. Sitting in that motel room with a forensic report on the nightstand and sealed warrants filed at the courthouse, I understood. Walter knew. He knew Brenda was draining his accounts. He knew his son was too weak to stop her. He changed the executor because he trusted me, not to be kind, not to forgive, but to do what he was too sick to do himself. I set the pocket watch on the nightstand. "Tomorrow, Grandpa." I slept 3 hours. It was enough. The motel shower ran lukewarm. I didn't care. I dressed in front of the bathroom mirror. Navy blazer, white blouse, dark slacks. Not for show. For armor. Professional means prepared. Prepared means in control. I put Walter's pocket watch in the inside pocket of the blazer, over my heart. Then I packed the briefcase. Forensic report. Walter's letter.
Forged signature comparaison.
Break line photographs. Evidence in presentation order. Frank Dolan was waiting in the parking lot. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd shaved. His hair was combed back. He was wearing Walter's old corduroy jacket, the one I'd given him the day before when we went over his witness statement together. The jacket was too big in the shoulders, but Frank wore it like it meant something. It did. "Walter asked me to watch out for you," Frank said. "I couldn't stop what they did to your car. But I could make sure you knew. You saved my life, Frank." He shook his head. "Walter saved mine first. 20 years ago, when nobody else would hire a man with a felony on his record. Frank had done 18 months in his 20s, an assault charge from a bar fight. When he got out, every shop in Knoxville turned him away. Walter hired him the same afternoon he walked in the door. He said, 'I don't care what you did. I care what you do next.'" That sounded exactly like Walter. We drove in Nolan's rented sedan, me, Nolan, and Frank. 3 people in a quiet car, heading to meet the 3 people who tried to erase me. Nobody talked. The pocket watch ticked inside my blazer. Knoxville traffic moved around us like the world hadn't changed at all. Margaret Holt's office was on the 2nd floor of a brick building on Gay Street. Gold lettering on the door. Narrow staircase. The kind of building where every footstep echoes. We pulled into the lot at 9:40. The reading was at 10. 3 cars already parked. Brenda's silver SUV close to the entrance. Derek's black pickup backed into a far corner, like a getaway vehicle. Victor's gray sedan angled badly across two spots. The parking job of a man whose hands were shaking. I rubbed my palms together in the passenger seat. The phantom smell hit me, brake fluid on asphalt, chemical and sharp. It wasn't there. My hands were clean. But the memory lived in my skin now, the way certain things do when your body remembers what your mind would rather forget. Nolan checked his phone. Clara's in position. 2 unmarked vehicles on the street. She'll wait for your text. I nodded. Briefcase in my lap. Everything inside it organized, labeled, ready. Frank stayed in the lobby downstairs. I'll be right here, he said. I climbed the stairs. Each step deliberate. The stairwell smelled like old carpet and printer toner. At the top, a fire door with a glass panel. Through it I could see them. Brenda checking her phone, legs crossed, face composed. Victor staring at the table, both hands flat on the wood. Derek bouncing his right leg up down. Margaret at the head of the table, hands folded, waiting. I pushed through the door. The heavy click of the latch behind me traveled through the room like a starting pistol. Brenda looked up first. Her phone slipped from her fingers and hit the table face down. The color left her cheeks in a wave, like watching paint thin in water. Victor's hand jerked. His coffee cup tipped sideways. Brown liquid spread across the polished table in a slow tide. He didn't move to clean it. He didn't move at all. Derek froze mid-bounce. His mouth opened. Stayed open. No sound came out. The silence that followed had weight. Margaret watched them the way an attorney watches a deposition, noting every involuntary reaction, cataloging every unguarded moment. I walked to the empty chair beside Margaret, set my briefcase on the table, opened it, removed the folder, closed the briefcase. Every movement measured. Unhurried. The way I present findings at a security audit. Panic is a choice. I'd made mine days ago. Good morning. I sat down, smoothed the folder in front of me, looked at Margaret. Please proceed with the reading. Margaret read Walter's will in a measured voice. And here's the part that would have been funny, if it weren't so devastating. Walter's estate. The house in West Knoxville, his savings and checking accounts, a life insurance policy, and the residual proceeds from the garage's closure. Total appraised value. Approximately $555,000 after debts and taxes. Distribution. Divided equally 3 ways. Victor Calloway. Derek Calloway. Grace Reed. Each share. Approximately $185,000. I watched the room. Brenda's shoulders dropped 2 inches. She exhaled through her nose. A long, slow release of held breath. Victor's hands uncurled from fists he hadn't known he was making. Derek looked at the ceiling and blinked rapidly. They'd spent weeks terrified that Walter had cut them out. They'd convinced themselves that the girl from foster care, the stray, the outsider, was going to inherit everything. So they cut my break lines. To stop me from attending a reading where I was getting exactly the same share as everyone else. Equal. $185,000. The same amount for the woman who stole $247,000. The man who forged his father's name on a loan. And the kid who crawled under my car at 2 a.m. with a cutting tool. Walter loved them all, even the ones who robbed him. The irony was so dense I could taste it, metallic, like blood from biting your tongue to keep from screaming. But I wasn't going to scream. Margaret set the will aside and placed a sealed envelope on the table. There is one additional item. Walter left a personal letter to be read aloud to the family. His instructions were specific. It could only be opened if Grace was present. Brenda's relief curdled. She glanced at Victor. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Margaret broke the seal and read. If you're hearing this, it means Gracie is in the room. I'm glad. I want to say a few things while I've still got the words, even if I'm not around to say them myself. I built that garage from one lift and a rented bay. Took me 40 years to turn it into something. Not because I was smart, because I showed up every day and did honest work. That's what family means to me. Showing up when it costs you something. I watched my money disappear for 3 years. $15,000 every 2 weeks, like clockwork. I kept quiet because I wanted to see if any of you would come to me and tell the truth before I died. Nobody did. Brenda sat perfectly still. Her jaw worked, but her lips stayed sealed. I was wrong about 3 of you. I was right about 1. Gracie, if you're hearing this, it means you came. I knew you would. I changed the executor to you because you're the only one I trust to do what's right. Not what's easy. What's right. Margaret set the letter down. I looked at her. She looked at me. I nodded. I opened the folder and slid the forensic report to the center of the table. Grandpa was right. And I have the proof. I walked them through it the way I'd walk a board of directors through a breach report. Calm. Specific. No adjectives, just data. 78 unauthorized transactions over 36 months. $247,000 transferred from Walter's checking account to a shell account registered under the name B. Prescott, Brenda Calloway's maiden name. From there, the money was distributed to 3 destinations. I listed them. Each one landed in the room like a stone dropped in still water. $140,000 to Callaway Motors. $47,000 to Derek's credit card accounts. $60,000 as a down payment on a vacation property in Gatlinburg, titled solely in your name, Brenda. Brenda's chin lifted. That is ridiculous. Walter gave me access to help with his bills. I was managing his finances because nobody else would. Managing someone's finances doesn't require a shell account under your maiden name. Those accounts are private. You have no right. They're estate accounts now. I tapped the folder. And I'm the executor. Brenda pushed back from the table. Stood. Both hands flat on the wood. You have no right. You're not family. You never were. The same words. The hallway voice from Walter's funeral. But louder now. Desperate. Cracking at the edges. I didn't flinch. You said that at the funeral. I remember. I reached into the folder and placed 2 glossy photographs on the table. Both front brake lines on my car, cut clean through. Brake fluid dark on the asphalt beneath. The chemical smell came back to me. Not phantom anymore. Printed on 8x10 glossy paper. Lying face up under fluorescent light. I placed the February 14th withdrawal slip next to an authenticated sample of Walter's actual signature from the county clerk's power of attorney filing. This is Walter's signature. I pointed to the authenticated copy. And this is the one on the withdrawal slip for $47,000. I pointed to the forgery. Different hand. The W is too narrow. The C is cramped. Walter didn't authorize this withdrawal. Someone forged his name. Victor's hands began to shake. He recognized the handwriting, not because he was analyzing it, but because he knew exactly whose hand it was. I placed the loan agreement on the table. $340,000. Callaway Motors. Walter's house listed as collateral. And here, I pointed to the signature line. Another forgery. Same narrow W, same cramped C. You pledged your father's home to cover your own debt, Victor. Without his knowledge. Without his consent. Victor opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Derek panicked. I didn't touch any money. I don't know anything about accounts or... No. You did something else. I laid out the AutoZone receipt. Derek's credit card number. Brake line cutting tool. Dated 2 days before the sabotage. Then the security camera stills. Derek's black pickup. Entering my parking lot at 1:47 a.m. Leaving at 2:23 a.m. Then the mechanic's sworn statement. Both front brake lines deliberately severed with a sharp tool. Derek's eyes went wide. That I didn't, Mom, they have cameras. You said there weren't cameras at her place. Brenda snapped back. I told you to use cash. The room went silent. Brenda's mouth opened. Closed. She'd said it before she could stop herself. The reflexive blame of someone who gives orders, directed at someone who botched the execution. Victor's voice broke open. Grace, I didn't know about the brakes. I knew about the money. I knew what Brenda was doing. But I didn't know she'd try to. I would never have agreed to. He stopped. Swallowed. His hands were flat on the table, palms up. A man with nothing left to offer but surrender. For half a second he looked like Walter. Same jawline. Same way his shoulders dropped when he was tired. I saw the resemblance and felt nothing. Not anger. Not pity. Just the clear, cold recognition that this man had chosen his wife's plan over his daughter's life. You knew about the money, Victor. You forged a loan document using your father's house as collateral. You watched Brenda steal from a man who was dying in a wheelchair, and you said nothing because it paid your bills. I was going to pay it back. The dealership was $340,000 in debt. It was never going to turn around, and you know that. Margaret slid a document across the table. Mr. Calloway, under Tennessee Statute 71-6-117, elder financial exploitation is a Class B felony. Additionally, a beneficiary who participates in fraud against the decedent may face forfeiture of their inheritance share under the estate executor's authority. Victor stared at the document. He didn't touch it. Brenda's chair scraped backward. She stood, and the tremor in her hands had nothing to do with fear. It was rage, the kind that comes from losing control of something you spent 30 years managing. This is my family's money. Walter was my husband's father. I gave 30 years to this family. 30 years. I raised 2 children. I managed every bill, every appointment, every holiday. I kept this family together while Walter played favorites with a stray he picked up from foster care. Her finger shook as she pointed at me. You should be grateful we took you in at all. The room held its breath. I reached into my blazer pocket, pulled out Walter's pocket watch, set it on the table between the forensic report and the brake line photographs. The ticking filled the silence, steady and small, like a heartbeat that refused to stop. Walter gave me this watch the week before he died. He told me to keep it wound because it stops when you forget. I looked at Brenda. You forgot something. You forgot that the person you spent 25 years calling an outsider was the one person Walter trusted enough to give the keys. Brenda opened her mouth. You're right about one thing, I said. Quietly. The way you say something that doesn't need volume to carry. I was never your family. I was Walter's. And I always will be. I turned to Margaret. Please read the executor designation. Margaret opened a single-page codicil, signed by Walter in her office 2 months before his death, witnessed by 2 paralegals, notarized, legally unassailable. Walter Calloway hereby designates Grace Reed as sole executor of his estate, with full authority to manage, distribute, and pursue civil recovery claims against any beneficiary found to have committed fraud, forgery, or financial exploitation against the estate or the decedent. Full authority. Walter had given me the legal standing to do what his body couldn't. I'm exercising that authority now. Brenda, the $247,000 will be recovered through liquidation of the Gatlinburg property and Callaway Motors assets. Victor, the forged loan consent will be voided, and the lender will be notified of the forgery. Derek. I looked at him. He was gripping the chair arms with both hands. You'll need to discuss the brake line matter with the officers downstairs. Officers. Derek's voice cracked. What officers? I picked up my phone, typed one word to Clara. Now. Sent it. The room waited. 30 seconds. Nobody breathed. Then footsteps on the stairs. The same narrow staircase I'd climbed an hour ago. 2 sets of heavy shoes. 1 lighter pair. The fire door opened with the same heavy click I'd heard on my way in. But this time, it wasn't me walking through. It was 2 uniformed officers and Detective Clara Sims, badge clipped to her belt, warrant folder in hand. Clara stopped in the doorway. Looked at me. I nodded. She stepped inside. Derek Calloway, you are under arrest for attempted first-degree murder. You have the right to remain silent. Derek lunged from his chair, not toward the door, but toward the back wall, like an animal looking for a corner. An officer cut him off in 1 step. Derek's knees buckled. He sat down on the carpet, hands on his head, the way someone sits when their entire operating system crashes. He'd never known what to do without instructions. Brenda Calloway, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and elder financial exploitation. Brenda didn't crumble. She went rigid, lifted her chin. When the officer placed the cuffs on her wrists, she turned to me one last time. You'll regret this. You'll be alone. You'll have no one. I stayed in my chair, hands folded. I had no one the day you told me I wasn't family. I built my life anyway. As the officers walked Brenda through the lobby, Frank Dolan was standing by the front desk in Walter's corduroy jacket. Brenda stopped. Stared. You. Her voice shook. You did this. You ruined everything. Frank looked at her the way a mechanic looks at a machine that's been running wrong for years and finally seized. No, ma'am. You did. The door closed behind her. The same click. But final now. Done. The legal process moved the way it does, steadily, without drama, without mercy. Brenda was charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and elder financial exploitation. A judge denied bail, citing flight risk and severity of charges. She was held at Knox County Detention Facility. Derek was charged with attempted first-degree murder. Bail was set at $500,000. He didn't have it. Neither did anyone who might have posted it. Victor cooperated fully. He sat with Clara and an assistant DA the following week and laid out everything: Brenda's plan, the shell account, the forged loan, his own role in all of it. He took a plea, 18 months supervised probation, full restitution of the forged $340,000 loan, and permanent forfeiture of his inheritance share. Callaway Motors closed. The inventory was auctioned. The Gatlinburg vacation home sold within 6 weeks. Proceeds returned to the estate. The lien on Walter's house, based on a forged consent, was voided. Title cleared. The house was mine now. Not by greed. By designation. I distributed the estate according to Walter's wishes. My 1/3 share is written. Victor's forfeited share went to the community programs Walter had quietly supported for years: the Vocational Training Center on Magnolia Avenue, the after-school program at the library on North Central. I offered Frank Dolan a job, building maintenance at Walter's property, which I was converting into a small cybersecurity consulting office. He accepted. The apartment above the garage was his first stable address in 6 years. The morning he moved in, he hung Walter's corduroy jacket on the hook by the door. Feels like he's still here, Frank said. It did. 2 months later, I sat at Walter's kitchen table. The same table where he'd taught me to wind the pocket watch, where he'd eaten his morning oatmeal, where he'd watched cardinals through the window in his last winter. My laptop was open. A vulnerability assessment for a healthcare company in Nashville. Coffee in Walter's ceramic mug. The one with the chipped handle he'd refused to throw away for 20 years. The garage out back had a new sign by the door. Cybersecurity, digital forensics and risk assessment. Through the kitchen window, I could see Frank below, mending the back fence. He whistled while he worked, something tuneless and repetitive that Walter probably would have recognized. The house smelled like coffee and sawdust. Not brake fluid. Not motel carpet. Not fear. Home. The pocket watch sat on the table next to my laptop. I wound it every morning. 40 turns, no more, the way Walter taught me. It ticked quietly alongside the hum of the computer and the distant sound of Frank's hammer. Some mornings, I forgot for a few seconds that Walter was gone. The watch kept his time for him. Saturday morning, I drove to the cemetery on the west side of Knoxville, where the dogwood trees line the road, and the headstones catch the early light. Walter's grave was in the 3rd row from the path. Simple granite marker. Walter Callaway. 1941 to 2025. Honest work, honest life. He would have said even that was too many words. I didn't bring flowers. I brought a wrench. The first tool he'd ever bought for the garage, a 1/4-inch Craftsman I'd found in his workbench drawer when I was cleaning the house. I laid it on the headstone and let it rest there. Steel on stone. The way tools belong in a mechanic's hands. We got them, Grandpa. Every last one. The granite was warm from the morning sun. I rested my palm on it for a moment and felt nothing but stillness. Then I walked back to the car. The pocket watch ticked in my blazer pocket. Steady and small. His heartbeat still going. Mine too. Family isn't a word on adoption papers, or a name on a will. It's the mechanic who sleeps in a parking lot, because a dead man asked him to watch out for you. It's the attorney who holds a sealed letter for 30 years, and doesn't open it until the right person walks through the door. It's the grandfather who believed you'd fight, even when he couldn't. The people who love you build you up. The people who don't tear you down and call it family. I grew up being told I was a stray. A footnote. The girl in the back bedroom who didn't belong in the Christmas card. Walter knew different. And because he left me the tools, the watch, the will, the legal authority, the breadcrumbs of his own careful documentation, I had everything I needed to finish what he started. One homeless man. One cut-break line. A family that tried to erase me for money they were already getting. And a forensic report 6 sections long that dismantled them one document at a time. Pause. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's thorough. If this story gave you that rush, that deep bone-level sense of justice served, hit the like button right now. It takes 2 seconds, and it means the world for this channel. Subscribe if you're new. We do this every week. Real stories about ordinary people who faced extraordinary betrayal and found a way through. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to protect you? Tell me your story. And if someone in your life needs to hear this, someone who's been told they don't belong, that they're not family, that they should be grateful for less than they deserve, share this video with them today. Click the next video on screen for another story just like this one. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.